Hi, welcome to Christian Books Club, and I was going to stop for today, but I think I'll do one more video, and then I'm going to go home. So this next chapter is chapter 6, Dangerous Christian Nationalists. So a view from the mainstream media. So the first question is, what is Christian nationalism? Or what is a Christian nationalism? So maybe you don't know what that is, but I'm going to explain it. So not everyone who uses the term has their own ideas of what it means. So the people who use the term nationalism doesn't often, maybe they don't know what it means. Those ideas are often vastly different in nature from the ones underlining understanding of the term, and there's no commonly accepted definition to which anyone can appeal. So let's see. So there's different definitions of a nationalism. So media outlets differ their definition. Politics differ their definition. So everybody has their own definition of nationalism. But so a broad common denominator so the broad common denominator tends to be the idea that Christian nationalism is a problematic merging of Christian and American identities. So Christian nationalism, I guess, is somebody who's Christian and they have American identities. So, for example, cultural framework that blurs distinction between Christian identity and American identity, varying the two as closely related and seeking to enhance and preserve their union. So Christian nationalism is you're seeing the challenge. What does it mean to merge identities or blur distinctions? And why is it problematic? So why is it problematic to merge the identities or blur distinctions? So why is it problematic? Does it mean there are Christians who are placing a love for country over a love for God? Does it mean that Christians who believe in America was founded on something, Christian values, and seek to maintain those values? Does it mean that there are Christians who believe they're called to influence today's public square with their convictions? So the media continually warns about the threat of Christian nationalism, but no one defines the threat in the same way. So that means our task is challenging. So the task is challenging. So we can't simply evaluate the one issue of Christian nationalism, because the term represents different kind of issues. So that term represents different kind of issues. So it's a hard thing to define. Let's see. So according to their levels of agreement or disagreement, so here's the six statements that I guess you can agree or not agree. So I'm going to read the 6 statements. So the federal government should declare the United States as a Christian nation. Maybe you agree or disagree. The federal government should advocate Christian values. Maybe you agree or not agree. The federal government should enforce strict separation of church and state. Maybe you agree or not agree. The federal government should allow the display of religious symbols in public squares. Agree or not agree. The success of the United States is part of God's plan. Agree or not agree. The federal government should allow prayer in public schools. Agree or not agree. So the first statement is fairly clear. But there are serious questions that may be raised regarding the meaning of the other statements. So the first statement is clear, but there may be questions raised about the other statements. So what does it mean for the government to advocate Christian values? Prohibiting the R word is one of many values So prohibiting the R word is one of the values consistent with Christianity, and one seems to have a problem with the government making laws accordingly. So what does strict separation of church and state mean? Given that even the Supreme Court has differed in its interpretation of what that boundary over time. So which religious symbols, what does it mean for all those things? Let's see. So this is another question of how, or another examples of how Christian nationalism or nationalists problematically differently in their views from rejectors. I don't know what those words are. But it says federal government should enact stricter gun laws. Abortion is always wrong, even if the family cannot afford the child. Middle East refugees are terror threat. Middle East refugees are a terror threat. Government spending too little on the military and defense. People should be made to show respect. People should be made to show respect for American traditions. So if a person thinks existing gun laws are sufficient and abortion is wrong, has concerns that refugees in the Middle East could pose a threat, is in favor of increasing national defense. So with those views in mind, or with those views associated with a dangerous Christian nationalism, there is just one set of questions many with a similar ideology meant. So a public religion research institution, basically some facts here. So the Christian institution researchers ask people to rate their level of agreement or disagreement with the following 5 questions. So these 5 questions on a scale from 1 to 5, how much do you disagree and how much do you agree? So the first question is, the U.S. government should declare America a Christian nation. Laws should be based on Christian values. If the U.S. moves away from our Christian foundations, we will not have a country anymore. Being Christian is an important part of being truly American. God has called Christians to exercise dominion over all areas of American society. So question 1 and 2 are very simple to those. So I guess to the Whitehead and Perry's book. So I guess that's a book. So questions 1 and 2 are simpler to those. Use the book. Yeah, it's a book. And questions 3 and 5 are different, but yet again we find that they are highly ambitious. So researchers showed that their answer are found that 10% are Christian nationalists, something. I'm not sure what that word. And 19% are Christian nationalism sympathizers. Oh, I know that word, sympathizers. Let's see. And about 29% of Americans are in the same sense Christian nationalists. So I was talking about another book, like something book. I'm not sure, the researchers. So I'm just saying stuff like that. So Christian identify, issue priorities. So the next takeaway from the research is, so there are 2 prominent and influential studies on Christian nationalism. So researchers use a highly ambitious set of questions to determine people's orientation toward what they think of a Christian nationalism. The people who end up grouped as Christian nationalism based on the way these questions are framed tend to be conservative Christians. Researchers then show this group of Christian nationalism hold views unpopular with progressive and purpose that's innovative of a something problem. I'm not sure. So that's just explaining that part. And now the next point is the media's dangerous narrative. That's right. Media's so many different dumb things. Let's see. So what it says about the media. So there are concerns. So there are three types. Christian in imposing, conservative, so Christian conservatives, so values on others through the political process. Number 2, racism. And 3, xenomorphia. I don't know what that word is. So now it's probably we're gonna talk about those 3 and what it means. So the first one is something of conservative values. So much of, not most of, all the media's concern with Christian nationalism mirrors the concerns of the researchers. So those who they call Christian nationalists advocate for policies associated with the culturally conservative positions. So sometimes the media refers to researchers' definition of Christian nationalism, but oftentimes they pre-purpose their own definition that boils down to logic. So here's some logic that the media gives their definition about. Christians who vote in publicly conservative ways want to impose their religiously informed views on everyone else. Religiously informed views aren't supposed to be brought into the public square in a secular democracy. These people are therefore anti-dogmatic and are theoretic and pose a dangerous threat to our democracy. We'll call them Christian nationalists for wanting to impose Christian values on the whole nation when society holds many different beliefs. So there are 2 underlying assumptions with those 2 parts. Or there are 2 underlying assumptions that render the entire narrative wrong-minded. Number 1, that is an anti-dogmatic imposition of values for any given segment of people to advocate for their own values in the public square. Number 2, that it's I don't know what those words are, theoretic, if a person or group advocates for views that are religiously informed. So first, in every matter of policy, someone is imposing their view on someone else. It is no more imposing of one group to advocate for a policy rooted in their values than it is for a group with an opposing position to advocate for a policy rooted in their views. Advocating for policies based on your views isn't anti-dogmatic. It's using our democracy exactly as it's intended to be used. So just because you have views, that's how democracy should be used. Is you should be able to share your views just like everybody else. To be, I'm not sure what that is, anti-democratic, that's the word. To be anti-democratic would be to seek other form of government or to attempt to proper something within our current system. Neither of those things is happening when people simply advocate for policies according to their values. Second, to be secular only means the United States is not committed to the authority of any particular religion in public life. So individuals are free to advocate for policies that follow from their convictions. Advocating for views that happen to be religious informed is therefore not theocratic. I don't know what that word. A theocracy is an entirely different form of government in which God is formally recognized as the supreme civil ruler. So calling Christians to advocate for their religiously informed views may make for powerful something, but it's a simply an inaccurate use of language. So media doesn't understand this. Because they don't label it Christian nationalism, if Christian's convictions lead him or her to advocate for progressive positions. So another example in an article of ABC, Christian nationalism threatens democracy. Some experts say journalist something writes, although the full extent of the movement isn't clear, experts who spoke with ABC warned that the ideology of Christian nationalism threatens American democracy. So that's just an example. Basically, I guess people think that Christian nationalism, basically, I guess they think that it threatens their democracy. That's just an example. Let's see. So it's not Christian nationalists who believe rights come from God. It's all Christians. If any inherent human rights exist, they necessarily come from a God with the authority and the ability to give them. So, but regardless of where rights come from or where people even think their rights come from. So, let's see. It's obvious that a problem with conservative Christians applying their religious convictions to public policy. That's extremist thing. So if you apply your Christian religious convictions to others, then you're being an extremist or applying. So there are only some examples. And the next point is racism. Another media coverage on Christian nationalism centers on what sometimes labeled as white Christian nationalism. The idea that Christian nationalists are racist and dangerously want to see their racist views reflected in how society functions. So the media uses all kinds of evidence to suggest racism among those they labeled Christian nationalism. So some of which indicates actual racism. So, for example, Christians rejecting critical race theory based something. I'm not sure. That's just an example. So stuff like that. So also let's see. And it says, so here's another questions, basically. So I'm going to ask some questions, and then it says, rate that disagreement from a level of 1 to 10. Agree or disagree. So this is a statement that determine what they call anti-black statements. So these anti-black statements basically agree or disagree on these 4 statements. Generations of slavery and discrimination have created conditions that make it difficult for many black Americans to work their way out of lower class. Agree or disagree. Today, discrimination against white Americans has become as a has become as big a problem as discrimination against black Americans and other minorities. Agree or disagree? A black person is more likely to receive the death penalty for the same crime. Agree or disagree? White supremacy is still a major problem in the U.S. today. I disagree or agree. So a person's views on these statements have no necessary relationship to racism. So those questions do not apply to racism. But people, I think, basically might assume that that person is racist based on those questions or those statements. So to measure people's perception of the degree to which white supremacy and discrimination remain a problem today, so people can disagree in that perception without it reflecting racism. So people can disagree in that perception without it reflecting racism. So those who identified as Christian nationalism differently on their answers to this question, regardless of their race. So the next point is, I don't know how to even say that word, xenomorphia. I don't know what that word is. I gotta look it up. That's such a weird word. A-N. There we go. So this word right here. So xenomorphia. So xenomorphia is a fear of people who are perceived as different from 10 based on their nation's nationality, ethnicity, race, or religion. So it can also be defined as a belief that certain groups threaten society's identities. So I guess, okay, so basically people who, so yeah, that word, that's a weird one. So closely concerns about Christian nationalism being racist are concerns about it being, okay, so concerns about it being basically perceived as different of nationality or something like that, or believed to threaten groups of society, something like that. So here's another statement. So people got asked what they call anti-immigration attitudes by asking respondents to rate their level of agreement or disagreement with the statements. So these are anti-immigrant attitudes, and rate these questions. There's 3 of them. The American way of life needs to be protected from foreign influence. Disagree or agree? A growing number of newcomers from other countries strengthens American society. Agree or don't agree? Immigrations are invading our country and replacing our culture and ethnic background. Disagree or agree? So those statements reflect people's views on the amount of impact of immigration. But you would be hard-pressed to conclude from responding to these statements that someone is xenomorphic. With the possible exception of the third one, the language invading has strong condemnations. But that said, even the most progressive media outlets have been covering what has widely been described as a border crisis. Let's see. So just as with racism, there are surely people in America who hold truly hostage, ungodly views toward people from other countries. Yeah, and those are the worst people. Those are the people that need to get out of the country, are the people that hold racist views and are hostile to ungodly views toward people who have other countries, from other countries. Those are the worst people. So does Christian nationalism threaten democracy? All right, so there's going to be a couple questions here. So I'm going to kind of skip ahead. So, quick responses to 5 popular challenges on Christian nationalism. So, these are 5 challenges on Christian nationalism. Number 1, Christian nationalism is one of the biggest threats to democracy today. So, what do you mean by Christian nationalism? How do you see it threatening democracy? Number 2, Christians want to step up a what is that word? Theorists? I don't know. By imposing their values on someone else. What do you mean by I don't know what that word is. What kinds of values do you think Christians are imposing on their way that's not consistent with a dramatic form of government? Let me look up that word. Because that is a interesting word. Let's see. TheorDrac. This word.
Theocracy.
Okay, not that word. Let me see. No. English to English. Got that.
Theocracy.
I don't know what that word is.
Theocracy.
Theocracy? I guess that's the word. So Christians want to set up a theocracy by imposing their views on everyone else. So what do you mean by theocracy? What kinds of values do you think Christians are imposing on others in a way that's not consistent with a democratic form of government? Number 3, Christians shouldn't be able to impose their views on everyone else because America has a separation of church and state. What form your perspective does separation of church and state mean? What is your basis for defining it that way? Can you share some examples of how you believe Christians are not respecting their boundary? Number 4, America was never a Christian nation and shouldn't be today. What do you mean by Christian nation? What are some examples you see of people advocating for America to be a Christian nation in that way today? Number 5, Christians just want power. Do you think it's inherently bad for a group to want power? Are there some who should be allowed to seek power and some who shouldn't? What makes Christians different from anyone else? Who wants to seek political office or influence? And here's some 7 questions also. So, actions for the common good. 7 ways to shine your light through political involvement. So, number 1, how do you shine your light? Educate yourself on issues of political relevance for Christians. Get to know who your representatives and senators are in both the U.S. and state governments. Number 3, vote. Number 4, follow, donate to, and pray for Christian legal advocacy groups. Number 5, support a nonprofit organization that advocates politically for specific issues. Number 6, know and get involved with your local school board. Number 7, help equip those in church community with a better understanding of the role of public Christian influence. And that's basically the chapter. And that's pretty much it out. So that is the chapter on Christian nationalism. So maybe that's what it means, or what people think it means. And like I said, the definition changes between people. And yeah, and that's it for today. And I'm halfway through the book. So yeah, halfway through the book, and I'll be back tomorrow with the next chapter. And God is good all the time. And I'm out.